Hi everyone, this is Sarah at Health by Sarah. Today I'm going to talk to you about something that's a little more heavy, miscarriage. And I went through a miscarriage last summer with my second pregnancy, and it was something very unexpected, of course. I probably to anybody for that matter, but I had already had a successful first pregnancy with my oldest, and you just never think that it's going to happen to you until it does. And I was almost 11 weeks along. Um, we weren't really planning that pregnancy, but it was just a complete shock. And as soon as we found out, we were just completely devastated. And um, it just took a little while for things to feel normal again. But what happened, there was one morning I woke up and I saw blood when I was going to the bathroom when I wiped myself. And it was like brownish, which I thought was a good sign because I had heard that that could mean that it's old blood. And so I called my midwives. I was at a birthing center, and they said, you can come in and get things checked out if you want. And ultimately we ended up deciding to go in. So my husband, my oldest, and I, the three of us, we went. And so she listened with the Doppler just to check, and she wasn't able to find a heartbeat, but we hadn't given up hope yet. And she asked if it would be okay if we did an ultrasound, and we agreed that it was okay, just to check things out. And she said, okay, let me get the ultrasound set up. And so we did. We were waiting, and while we were waiting, I heard a voice in my head say a name, and it was a boy's name. At least my understanding was that it was a boy's name. And I didn't know why at the time I heard it, but after that, she had everything ready and she did an ultrasound, and she couldn't find a heartbeat. And then she did a transvaginal one, and she couldn't find anything. And so she said that she was very sorry. And we were obviously in shock at that moment. And she left the room to just, check with one of the doctors on staff about something. And I just completely broke down in that moment with my husband, and we were just very sad together. And my oldest was, I think, around 14 months at the time, and she wasn't really understanding what was going on, but she was affected by that too. And we just go home, and we're just very sad. I didn't realize it until after we got home, but I was thinking about the name that I had heard in my head before waiting for the ultrasound, and I realized that it was God speaking to me. And I felt after some time of reflection that it was his way of telling me what we should name our child. And so I talked to my husband about it, and we agreed to name our child the name that I had heard. And it was something so special to me, just because I haven't heard God speak to me that many times in my life, but that is one time that I very clearly remember that he was speaking to me. And that just, I don't know, gives me a little more closure, I suppose, about this whole thing, about losing our child. I'd like the next few days, I was just like sobbing, just uncontrollably. Like there were times where I wasn't, but then all of a sudden I would just break down again. And I was getting a lot of prayer from family and friends, and I'm really grateful for all that. I certainly think it helped with all the emotional support and spiritual support too. But then I called my homeopath, I think on day 3, and he told me to take Nat Mirror 200C and just take it one time and see how it goes. And within a few hours of taking it, I actually felt a lot better. I wasn't really sobbing anymore, and I was still crying. But then the next day, I wasn't like completely an emotional wreck, which was a huge blessing, really, because I really hated feeling that way. And that's not to say that I wasn't like feeling sad still or not processing things. I was. But it was really nice to have the homeopathy just allow me to process my emotions in a way where I wasn't just crying all the time, and being able to just kind of get through the day. So I do think that was the one thing that really helped me a lot. But who's to say that, people's prayers weren't what led me to get that homeopathic remedy that helped. I think that's possible. And so after that, I was just trying to do everything I could to just help my body to pass everything naturally. And because they offered me drugs or a DNC, and I wanted to avoid those things. And so I was expelling blood. At first it wasn't very much, but then like a week later was where I passed like a bunch of things, and I wasn't able to see the baby or anything. But yeah, it was when you see a lot of blood, it can be kind of a shock when like you've lost your child. And that was very painful when I was losing all the blood like a week later. And I ended up just taking an ibuprofen because I just did not want to feel the pain anymore. I just wanted to be able to take care of my oldest. And if you know anything about me, I just like to avoid drugs or pain relievers at any cost, unless I'm like completely desperate. So that was really a moment where I felt like this was appropriate, and they said it was safe anyway. So, because I was nursing my daughter at the time. But so then they kept on checking my HCG levels, because at first they told me to take pregnancy tests and they were still turning up positive. And so then they wanted me to come in to get my HCG levels tested, and they kept on being higher than what they would be. They said like less than a 5 means that you're not pregnant, or that everything has passed. I guess that's their marker of everything. And so mine were still above that. And so I decided to seek out acupuncture to see if that would help me. And it was helping my levels go down. And eventually it did help them go back to less than 5. And during this whole time, like after the miscarriage and the 2-3 months following, I was focusing on just getting my body as healthy as possible, just healing. And my husband and I, we just were saying, okay, well, let's just like give my body some time to heal before I get pregnant again. Like maybe wait another several months or something until the next year, and so our finances could get better too. And what I was doing, I was getting myself on a really high quality prenatal because I was not on one before, and taking folate. So I was taking a lot of folate, eating a lot of organ meats. That's really the best thing, is to have a great diet. Because I did have a good diet before, but I was like really focusing on making sure everything was nutrient dense this time around, and supplementing as a backup, really, because I, with our modern diet and modern lifestyle, there, even if you're eating like the best diet out there, the most nutrient dense, there may be some gaps in your nutrition that you may need. So that's why I do believe in supplementation, and I have a whole blog article about why I think prenatals are necessary, and I will share that below. And I will also share what I was supplementing with as well. I was taking high quality prenatal folate, emu oil, cod liver oil, desiccated liver pills. So even though I was eating organ meats very frequently, more than once a week, especially liver, I was also supplementing with desiccated liver, just in case I didn't eat it frequently enough. And probiotic and vitamin C. I was taking mega doses of vitamin C too. And doing all those things, acupuncture, my acupuncturist recommended that I only eat warming foods for a couple months, and so I did that. And I was also trying to get sunlight every single day to get enough vitamin D, because I had my thyroid levels checked when they had checked other lab tests, and they were abnormal for the first time in my life. So I had thyroiditis, and I had hyperthyroidism. And you heard me right, that's not hypo, I said hyperthyroidism. That's what my lab showed. So my homeopath said it looks like I had Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And so in my research with that, everyone was saying that you need to get your vitamin D levels up to help with Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And so I was getting outside as much as possible and tracking my vitamin D levels on this app called D-Minder. So I was just taking like almost daily walks, or just trying to get outside if I didn't take a walk, and trying to get like at least 15 to 30 minutes of sunlight a day when it was actually like vitamin D. But this was like during the summer/fall, so I was getting more vitamin D than you would in the winter, which is almost nothing depending on where you live. But I was doing all those things to just try and help to get me healthier and support my body. And then pretty much 3 months after I had my miscarriage, I got pregnant again. And well, I didn't find out right away, but it was it was like sometime after the miscarriage, a few months later, that I found out that I was pregnant again. It was sooner than we were wanting to get pregnant, but that's okay. I was like, well, I'm gonna be happy about this, even though it wasn't planned again. And I just was choosing to be very happy from the beginning, and just doing all that I could to have a nutrient-dense diet and to support this pregnancy even better than the last time. And it had me nervous from before, because like anytime anybody loses a baby the next time around, or probably any time around in the future when you've had a loss, you're very nervous. And so what I forgot to say about the second pregnancy is that because in my first pregnancy, I was with an OBGYN, and his practice was to check progesterone throughout the pregnancy a couple times. My progesterone showed a little bit on the lower side the first pregnancy, and he does this because he's a NAPRO doctor. They were recommended that I take progesterone during that pregnancy, but I actually ended up not taking it. I decided to try natural means. I took homeopathy, and I did moxa. I have a video on that, on moxibustion, and I talked about my progesterone in another video, so I'll link those below as well. And in the second pregnancy, because the first pregnancy they had shown a little lower, I decided I wanted to check them from the beginning, and they showed that it was low. I think it was 7 weeks that they had it tested, and then around the next week, they told me about my lab results. It was even lower than what my level had been in the first pregnancy, and so I ended up deciding that I would supplement with progesterone. And by the time that I had taken it, I believe it was too late, because we had already lost the baby. Because even though I was close to 11 weeks when it happened, on the ultrasound, the midwife told me that it looked like we had lost the baby actually about 2 weeks before that. So even though I had started with progesterone supplementation, I think we may have already lost the baby, or right around that time. So then the third time around, I was like, okay, as soon as I saw the pregnancy test, the next day, because I'd taken it at night, the next day I phoned the birth center, and I was like, hey, I'm pregnant. And I said, but I'd like to get in as soon as possible so I can get a lab test to test for my progesterone. And they said, sure. And so they did, and my levels were like even lower than the second pregnancy. I was like, oh great, this is really scary. And so we started supplementing me on progesterone, and it did bring up my levels pretty quickly, which is great. But obviously, you all know, if you've seen any of my recent videos, that this third pregnancy, or my second child, was born in the car. And so I did have a successful pregnancy this last time around, and I'm very happy that she's here. We're very happy that she's here. And I just wanted to share my story of miscarriage and loss with you all, but also show that there is hope too. Because they told me that, this is very common for it to happen. Not that it's not sad or anything, but they told me that as a way to give me hope, I think, because they said, most people, it just happens once, and then you have another successful pregnancy. And that was the case with me. I really hope it never happens again. I also wanted to share, I have a whole blog post about my miscarriage story, and one of the reasons I thought that I could have had a miscarriage is, what they told me is that sometimes people miscarry because of a genetic defect. So one of the trisomies, or Down syndrome, so it made me wonder if that's what happened with our second baby, is that there was a genetic defect. And I wonder that because I was breastfeeding a lot still with my oldest. And so she was taking a lot of nutrients from me. And even though I did have a good, clean diet, I don't know if I was eating organ meats enough to supplement for her and for the new baby, the new pregnancy that I had. I don't know if a lot of it was used up by her. And I also wasn't really on any supplements other than cod liver oil, and maybe one other thing. But I, kind of to save money I stopped supplementing after she was a certain number of months old. But then after doing a lot of research, especially after my miscarriage, I came to the conclusion that it really is necessary in our modern world to supplement, or especially to supplement with folate, or have a good prenatal with folate in it while you're pregnant or preconception, because a lot of things can be prevented with enough folate supplementation. And unfortunately, when those critical things are happening, it's the first few weeks of pregnancy. And if you don't have enough nutrient stores, if you don't have enough folate in your diet, then your child might have tongue tie or lip tie, cleft lip or cleft palate. I even heard that this can be related to Down syndrome as well. Dr. Ben Lynch has talked about this a lot on his website, and he has a whole line of supplements that help with that. I've been taking his prenatal since before I got pregnant with my youngest daughter, and his prenatal is phenomenal. It just like has all these different minerals and vitamins in it that other prenatals do not have. So it's very expensive, but I thought it was worth it because I was like, I really do not want to lose another child, and I just want to be as healthy as possible. I want my child to be as healthy as possible. So that's why I did it, and just always focusing on nutrition too as much as I could. But anyway, that was a really long story, and I hope that it helps somebody out there to hear my story. And please give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and please subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell, and you'll know when I post. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and feel free to share your stories as well. Until next time, bye.